Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2, in which I choose my top 5 favorite cards of a particular player. At the end of last week's video, I spun the wheel of names and it landed on George Kell. Now, I have to admit, I didn't know too much about George Kell's history. So I looked him up and found out some of his career highlights. So if you're not familiar with George Kell, I'm going to go over some of his career highlights here. He was primarily a third baseman and played from 1943 to 1957. He played for the Philadelphia Athletics, Detroit Tigers, Boston Red Sox, Chicago White Sox, and the Baltimore Orioles. He was a 10-time All-Star, and he had 8 consecutive seasons in which he batted at least 300 and finished his career with a 306 batting average. He was the American League batting champion in 1949 with a 343 average. And what's interesting about that batting title is that he denied Ted Williams his third Triple Crown. Ted Williams ended the season with a .3427 batting average versus a .3429 batting average of George Kell. So razor thin margin that George Kell won the batting title in 1949 over Ted Williams, denying him his what would have been his third Triple Crown season. Now, he was a great contact hitter. He only struck out 287 times in 6,702 at-bats. In fact, he holds the record for fewest strikeouts for a batting champion. In 1949, when he won the American League batting title, he only struck out 13 times. You don't see that today. He twice led the league in hits and doubles. He hit for the cycle in a game in 1950. He had 6 hits in a game in 1946. He was in the top 10 of American League MVP voting 3 times, and he was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee in 1983. And then after retiring from baseball, he went into broadcasting as a play-by-play announcer for the Detroit Tigers for several years. All right, so to narrow down the selection of cards that I had to choose from to pick my top 5 favorite George Kell cards, I went with the PSA Basic Set Registry of his. It's only 13 cards and consists of his 1949 Leaf card, his 1949 through 1955 Bowman cards, and his 1952, 53, and 56 through 58 Topps cards. Now, here's where I would love all of you to participate as well. In the description of this video, I'll have a link to the PSA Basic Set Registry checklist for George Kell, so you can check out all 13 cards in that checklist. And from those 13 cards, would love to know in the comments which are your top 5 favorite. And if there are some George Kell cards not in that list of 13 cards that you really like, feel free to put them in the comments as well, and I'll have them as honorable mentions in the next video. And for your top 5 cards, if you could number them 1 through 5, 5 through 1, it'll help me compile the results for the next video. In fact, the next video won't be next week. I have a scheduling conflict, so you have 2 weeks to put in the comments and letting me know which are your top 5 favorite George Kell cards. All right, now last week's video, episode 1, was on Dave Winfield, and there were several of you who put in the comments of that video letting me know which were your top 5 favorite Dave Winfield cards. So I'm going to start off by going over the results of your comments and comparing your top 5 favorite Dave Winfield cards to my top 5 favorite. Then I'll get into my top 5 favorite George Kell cards. Then normally I'd turn the camera around again and show off the cards I have in my collection of that player. But unfortunately, I don't have any George Kell cards currently in my collection. So we'll just go right to the Wheel of Names, spin it, and see which player will be the focus of the next video in this series. So let's get started. All right, for Dave Winfield, you had 22 cards to choose from his PSA Basic Topps Set Registry checklist. It was his 1974 through 1995 Topps cards. Now, there were 9 of you who replied in the comments, letting me know which were your top 5 favorite cards of his, and here are the top 5 cards that were selected by you. With 8 selections, a tie for first was his 1976 and 1978 Topps cards, followed by 6 selections for his 1974 Topps card, 5 selections for his 1975 Topps card, and 4 selections for his 1987 Topps card. Now, there were several cards in his playing days run that didn't receive any selections. His 1985, 88, 89, 91, 92, 93, 94, and 95 Topps cards all did not have any selections. Now, before we get into the ranking of these top 5 and how it compared to mine, there were some honorable mentions as well that you put in the comments. So starting off, we have this 1976 Hostess, the 1981 Drakes, his 1984 Flair card, his 1985 Donruss card, his 1987 Donruss card, and a custom card from when Topps had balls in the design of the 1975 Topps set. All right, so the ranking of your top 5 selected cards and how it compared to my top 5. At number 5, you had his 1987 Topps card, which I had as my 3rd favorite. At number 4, you had his 1975 Topps card, which I did not have in my top 5. Then at the 3rd spot, you had his 1978 Topps card, which I had as my 2nd favorite. And then in 2nd place, you ranked his 1976 Topps card, which I had as my 5th favorite Dave Winfield card. And we were both in agreement that his 1974 Topps card is your favorite overall and my favorite Dave Winfield card. All right, on to George Kell. Again, you have 13 cards to choose from to select your top 5 favorite, as did I. His 1949 Leaf card, his 1949 through 1955 Bowman cards, and his 1952, 53, and 56 through 58 Topps cards. I believe for 54 and 55, he most likely had an exclusive contract with Bowman, which is why he was not in those 2 top sets. All right, for number 5, even though there were 13 cards to choose from, I did have a bit of a difficulty choosing my top 5. There were some really nice George Kell cards out there, and overall, I don't think the majority of his cards are that expensive. But at number 5, I decided to go with his 1949 Leaf card. 49 Leaf set is fairly basic, but I love the red background of this, and I actually love the image of him swinging, the follow-through swinging. It doesn't seem to be as much of a staged photograph, like just a portrait image or of him just holding the bat or some halfway swing. It's his full, complete swing in a Tigers uniform. I just think it's a really cool looking card, so I chose that as my 5th favorite George Kell card. At number 4, I went with this 1951 Bowman card. This is where he was still playing with the Tigers. I just think it's a cool card with the wood fence in the background there. Looks like he's reaching out to catch the ball. Just an interesting image, I thought. Really cool image. Love the design of the 51 Bowman set. And this is one that has his name on the front of the card, making it easily identifiable who the player is. At number 3, I went with this 1952 Bowman card. Again, still with the Detroit Tigers. Love the sky and the clouds in the background, the follow-through posed swing there. But just a classic 50s, early 50s from the cards that had the artist's rendering of a photograph. I just think that's a really beautiful looking card. So I selected his 1952 Bowman card as my third favorite. Now, for the last two, I struggled as to which was going to be my number one and number two favorite George Kell card, and it was really a toss-up. But I ultimately decided for number two to go with his 1952 Topps card. Again, in a Tigers uniform. Love the old Tigers logo. Love the image of George Kell there, and of course the classic 1952 Topps design. I think it's just a great looking card. Overall design, I don't know, it just spoke to me a little bit less though than the number one card, and we'll get to that here. So my favorite George Kell card at number one, I chose his 1956 Topps card. Now here he's featured with the Chicago White Sox, but what drew me to this card is the background of it. Obviously you have that big portrait image there on the right, you have that secondary image of that follow through swing, but the background there of the stadium in the background and the field, I just really love that design with the stadium in the background. I just think makes for a really cool card. So yes, that's the 1956 Topps is my favorite George Kell card. All right, like I said, I don't have any George Kell cards in my collection, so let's get to the Wheel of Names, spin it, and see which player will be the focus of the next video. Here is the Wheel of Names, and you can see on the right-hand side the 38 remaining players for Season 2. So let's give the wheel a spin. And the next video is going to be on Dwight Evans, Dewey. All right, lifetime Red Sox player. Actually, no, he was not a lifetime Red Sox player, but a very famous and well-loved Red Sox player. In my opinion, should be in the Hall of Fame, so this will be quite a fun video to do. Final reminder, you have 2 weeks to put in the comments of this video, letting me know which are your top 5 favorite George Kell cards. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.